Hey guys, welcome to Brian's Man Cave. So today I'm going to be showing you another viewer's cave. And this one is going to be mostly a collection of stuff, actually, not just the cave itself. And I started this when I did a video a while back called, it was a massive video game collection. And that video, when I put it together, I wasn't sure if people were going to like it. I wasn't sure if I was going to continue to do it. It was a thought that I had, and I thought, you know, if this one works out, I'm going to do some more. This one is a massive Atari collection, and what this guy Matt, what he's focused on is the Atari 2600, and that's one of my favorite systems. I mean, I love the Intellivision and I love the Atari. I love the really old systems. I mean, I do like playing, you know, some of the newer stuff as well, but I mean, I really stick to a lot of Atari, as you can see behind me. Now, this pales in comparison to what he has. So, what I'm going to be showing you is just a lot of the stuff, and I'm going to try and go into some detail, because there's a few things in there that are really impressive. And, I mean, this guy's been collecting for 24 years, you know, seriously collecting anyways. And, you know, he put a lot of pride into this collection. He put a lot of work, a lot of effort into it. And he scoped out a lot of rare stuff from all over the world. And that is his goal, primarily, is to collect everything Atari 2600 and clone. Now, that is huge, because the clone market for the Atari was fairly big. And you know, for those that aren't familiar with you know, what happened with Atari, was the system, when it was put out, there was no real proprietary parts to it. It was all kind of off-the-shelf parts. People could literally buy all these parts from Radio Shack and stuff and build an Atari. And they couldn't really hold on to their patent very well. And so that's when a lot of the other businesses out there, Coleco, Nintendo, wherever, were able to, like, you know, jump into the race and start building Atari games. But also overseas, you know, Taiwan, Japan, China, wherever, they had the opportunity to build their own system. And so they would build these clone systems. And they would also put out the games and stuff like that. And so the market was kind of flooded with these things. So it's really a big challenge to try and collect all of these hidden Atari gems that are all over the world. And so this is Matt's goal. And so I'm going to show off some of his collection and try and talk about what I see. So let's jump right into the collection and take a look. Okay, so let's begin looking at Matt's massive Atari collection. So the first thing I'm noticing here is a number of homebrews, but also really rare games. Games that are very hard to come by, and when you do come by them, they're actually pretty expensive. So let's zoom in a little bit here, because I just want to take a better look at what we've got here. Now, I'm seeing things like Bugs Bunny, which I believe is like a prototype or a homebrew. I think it's a prototype. There's actually a lot of prototypes I'm recognizing here. Like Frog Pond is in there. I saw that. If I go out here, there it is. Frog Pond. That's a prototype. Where is it? There's Snow White down here. That's a prototype. You know, a lot of these games are like, they never hit the market. And there's quite a few prototypes that never hit the market that probably should have. But I'm also noticing things like a tour here. I think that's how you pronounce that. And that's a homebrew. Also going over here. Gunfight. That's a homebrew, I believe. Halloween. Now, I didn't know there was actually two different box arts for Halloween. I knew there was two cartridges. One that actually has like a sticker label on it, and the other one that just has like almost like a piece of masking tape and the word Halloween written across there. You know, these games were made by companies that weren't really Atari branded or anything like that. They just kind of made these games. Elevator Action, I believe that's a prototype. That would have been a cool game, actually. I wish they would have actually made that properly and then actually released it into the to the world, but unfortunately they didn't. Combat 2, now I recognize that. That's on the Atari Flashback. It's probably another prototype. They just took the idea, the concept of combat, and just kind of stepped it up a bit. Like there's just a bunch. There's so many games here I don't even recognize. I'm not even gonna pretend I know what I'm talking about when it comes to most of these, because like I don't follow the prototype in the homebrew market that well. Things like Halo here it's like the 2600 version of Halo, not the actual Halo. And I know that that's a homebrew. It's actually pretty cool. They sell it at the Atari Age marketplace on the Atari Age forum. Holy moly, I've never heard of that. I don't know what that is. Holy moly. That's kind of strange. Labyrinth. There's so many different games that just kind of exists. Some of them officially went for sale. A lot of these games here are actually like, you know, these are all your hard to get. You got tooth protectors. Now, that one struck me as odd. I had to look into that one because I never heard of it. Well, I kind of heard of it. That's it here. Right beside another rare game, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, much like the Halloween game. It's a horror game and made by, what was it, Wizard Video Games? Yeah. But tooth protectors, very interesting. And this game is actually more rare than Chase the Chuckwagon. And I'm very aware of Chase the Chuckwagon because I have a copy of it. I have the cartridge and the manual. And I've heard that the box is really rare. And the only way you got that game was through the Purina mail-in order. You had to cut out these little points or whatever and mail it in. I mean, we probably, anybody that's around my age probably had to do this a long time ago, back in the 80s with cereal boxes and stuff. You'd cut out things, you'd mail it in, you'd get stuff. I remember I got a few Transformer toys like that. I got some G.I. Joe toys like that, and I did it with video games. Tooth protectors was actually from Johnson & Johnson. It was, probably also one of those promotional things. You send in UPC codes or whatever, and you got this game. So somehow this game became more rare than Chase the Chuckwagon. I think it's because a lot of people don't really care for it too much. Tooth protectors sounds kind of boring. There's already a game called Jawbreaker, and there's like a few other games that revolve around the whole teeth and the toothpaste and all that stuff. But this is kind of interesting. It's very rare if you can get your hands on it. Let's zoom out again. And down here I was noticing this one here, Sea Battle. Now, I'm very familiar with Sea Battle on the Intellivision because I used to play it, even though it's a two-player game on the Intellivision, but it was still kind of fun. Sword Fight, not too familiar with it, but I know that these are kind of like, these were like, I guess they call them reproductions, that they actually, took an existing game, reproduced it, brought it out on the Atari 2600, available through the Atari Age website again. There's a lot of great games that are actually brought out through the Atari Age. I'm noticing some stuff over here. You got like Concentration. This looks like just a random assortment of games there. He's got some cassette tapes there. It's probably for the Star Path, which I'll show you later. And some manuals. This looks like it's a whole shelf of just like goodies. That's all this one is. So let's move on. I think I've looked at all the ones I wanted to. Yeah, let's move on. So let's just look at this for a second. So you can see the way he's organized it. He's got a full-on like library of games, and it looks like it's all organized quite well, all in boxes. Very impressive. I mean, I only own one game in the Atari world that's actually in a box, and that's Star Raiders, because it comes with a controller. I don't even remember where I got it from. Honestly, I don't remember. But this is impressive. I mean, this is all like in-box, complete Atari games. All my Atari games are just cartridges, loose cartridges. So, yeah. So I'm going to start here because I see a lot of stuff that I remember and a lot of great, classic, memorable Atari games. So let's zoom in a little bit here. There's this one here, Skateboarding. Skateboarding, if you want to say it properly. I never heard of this game, but until I saw a video on it. The No Swear Gamer, which is one of the YouTubers I like to watch, He did a video on this one, and I was quite impressed by it. I never heard of it. It's probably one of those late release games, but we're getting into the Activision games here, and if you know Atari, you know that Activision made a lot of the great games for the system. A lot of these were retail; they were out for sale. I mean, you had Boxing, Freeway, Ghostbusters, Kaboom, which is a paddle controller game. One of my favorite paddle controller games of the system. Keystone Keepers, always a classic. In fact, I've talked a lot about this game. I did a video on it. It's one of my favorite games. It was one of the reasons why I bought the Atari 2600, the junior system, because I wanted Keystone Keepers. River Raid, always a classic. Doesn't matter what system you're on. He's got some duplicates here. I don't know if it's just the case that he bought a lot of games and ended up with dupes, or if there's a difference between them. Some of them look exactly the same, so I'm going to think that he just ended up with a lot of duplicates. So rather than just throw them in a box somewhere, he decided to put them on display. Of course, you got Dragster. This is an interesting title right here because as of today, in February 2018, Dragster has become a big topic right now because of the champion, the former champion, Todd. I forgot his last name. What was it? Whatever. This guy had the world record for the longest time, and it turned out that people are saying he faked it, or the whole thing was a sham. So it's interesting. It's funny that this game, which is very simple, very quick game, I mean, it's over in like seconds or like barely even minutes, if you can even get that far, and it's making headlines today because of that. We got Commando there, very great game. Unfortunately, some of these games I can't really tell. I think that's Private Eye there. That's a game I've had my eye on, no pun intended, for a while because it's quite interesting, and I've only got to play it on my Atari Flashback Portable. But it's a really cool game. I mean, I'm very impressed that this game existed for the Atari. And I'm noticing up here River Raid 2, and I know I had that game when I was a kid. My friend got it for me for my birthday. Unfortunately, it was one of the ones I ended up losing during my move. That looks like Pitfall 2. I just did a video on that too. That's a lot of fun. Kung Fu Master. Now that's kind of a rare title. That's also Activision. It's really interesting seeing all these Activision titles in the actual boxes, because most of the time people just have the cart. So it's really rare. Like Hero itself. Hero is an expensive game. I paid about $50 just for mine in the cart, and this is Hero in the box. So that's pretty impressive right there. It's got another Ghostbusters. I'm not really sure as to why the Ghostbusters are not beside each other. Maybe it's just the way he did it, or maybe one's a PAL version, or I don't know. I don't know what the difference is there. It's kind of interesting why that happened. But we also have a freeway here and 2 freeways here. So there must be some kind of method to this. And of course we've got another Dragster. Got some Space Shuttle games. I actually ended up getting my hands on a copy of Space Shuttle. It's not really a game, it's more of a simulation. It's the programmer actually created this game to give you the whole effect of if you were inside a shuttle and you were taking off into space. Kind of interesting. It uses all the switches on the actual Atari system. You don't just use your controller. And I know it came with, like, there was an overlay you can actually stick on the Atari VCS, and it will tell you what all the little buttons do. Very interesting, very innovative for its day. Of course, we got tennis, Shark Attack, Racquetball. I mean, lots of great titles. And then we're going into these red or these burgundy kind of color. And I remember these because that's when the Atari Junior came out. When the Atari Junior came out, that was sometime in the 90s, I believe, early 90s, possibly even late 80s. I can't remember the actual date. And that's when I got my first Atari. That's when it came back as the Atari Junior. They were kind of sort of competing with Nintendo, saying here's the Atari, a cheaper video gaming system. The games were cheaper, the system was cheaper, compared to Nintendo. Nintendo was like $100 and something. The games were like $60, $70. The Atari, you can get it for like 40, 50. The games were like 20. And so I'd go into like, well, there was no Walmart where I lived. Walmart never existed. There was Woolco, there was Zellers, there was Kmart. You know, those type of stores you'd go into and you could buy these things. I remember seeing a lot of these. So, yeah, a lot of these games, I kind of missed the mark on them. Like Secret Quest. It's a great game. I'd never heard of it until, you know, more recently. I actually saw a video on it, and I realized how cool this game was. And Roadrunner, you know, these games just didn't, I don't know, I don't remember seeing them on the shelf. I'm noticing down here he's got some of those boxed collections where you get like Indy 500, you get the driving controllers, you get slot racers. I don't know if slot racers even uses a driving controller. I thought it used a regular joystick. But I could be wrong on that one. And then we got the keyboard controller. And if you're not familiar with what that is, the keyboard controllers just had the number pad down there, and then it had like the, you know, kind of like a phone almost. So you could do like letters as well. And then Indy 500. Again, Indy 500 used the driving controller, and the driving controller was similar to the paddle controller. We're just going to go on to here. I'm seeing, okay, so I'm seeing Superman. That's cool. Pinball, video pinball. Not my favorite of the pinball games on the Atari. I like Midnight Magic myself, but I think some people do like the video pinball. I'm noticing a lot of the gray or the silver boxes here, and I remember seeing them on the shelf as well. I remember seeing on the shelves back in those days again, back when I used to buy the burgundy color with the Atari Junior. And they would have some of the gray Atari games out there. They'd have some of the burgundy, and I never really knew the difference. I mean, back when I was buying them. But it looks like there were some that were different titles, like Jungle Hunt. Really great game for the Atari 2600. Kangaroo, really frustrating game, really hard. Crawl, which is like a movie-based game. Moon Patrol, Pole Position. Some of these were like ported over onto multiple different companies who made the game, and you know, just different labels and stuff. I'm noticing over here, I noticed this one here, Blueprint. I have this game, and I haven't actually spent some time on actually figuring out how to play it. So that's going to be on my list of actually looking into, because it kind of looks interesting. But what I wanted to come down to is down here. So we got Pigs in Space, which is an interesting game. I don't have the Snoopy and the Red Baron one, but I know that all these are kind of like kids' games. But you also have these ones here, the Oscars, Trash Race, Cookie Monster Munch, Big Bird's Egg Catch, and Alpha Beam with Ernie. Now these games are all kids games. I guess they're made by the children's, Children's Computer Workshop, and they kind of, between the age of 3 and 7, they're supposed to be very simplified games. It's kind of interesting though, because you'd think that most of the Atari games are simplified, but I guess at that time they had to make them even more simplified. And what they did was they had instead of getting the kid to try and use an actual Atari joystick, they had a children's pad, a game pad, which was kind of like, you know, a typical, well, a little much bigger than your average game pad with big buttons. And you can put these inserts on there. It will tell you what the buttons are, and it was just run that way. It wasn't run by the traditional joystick. And so, but there wasn't too many of them made that way. And I believe if you were to get your hands on these, you can use the number pad that's used for the basic programming and the Star Raiders game. There's like a few of those out there that actually use that number pad. So they're all pretty much compatible. So if you ever get your hands on one of these, you know, kids games, you could probably still play it if you have the number pad. I have the Star Raiders pad, which came in the box. Track and Field, I had to look into that one too. Now this one comes with an interesting blue controller that has like a red button on the top and 2 white buttons on each side. And I mean, it's compatible with the joystick as well. It's just this makes it easier because it's like a track and field game you're running, and I guess you're smashing buttons at this point. A little bit different. I've never actually seen one in real life, but looking at the picture, I'm pretty sure I've seen them for sale. And of course there's Taz at the bottom there, one of my favorite games. Now this shelf, I was kind of, when I first saw it, I thought, is this all Atari? Because when I looked in the middle here, I thought I was looking at Odyssey games, Odyssey 2, and that's a completely different system, nothing to do with Atari. But then when I zoomed in, I realized they actually are Atari. These are the Starpath games. Starpath, well, Phaser Control, this one here had the Starpath, I believe, sold with it. And what the Starpath was is a module that expanded the RAM. Sorry, I got notes down here, that's why I'm looking down. That expanded the RAM from 128 bytes to 6,272 bytes. So this information I got off Atari Age because I don't know all this stuff. I mean, there's just so much Atari stuff out there. I'm not going to pretend that I'm a complete expert on this stuff. But when I was familiar with how the Starpath module works. Essentially, you plug it into your Atari. It has a wire that comes out, and it's like a phono jack at the end. You stick it into a tape recorder, and then you can use audio tapes on it. Now, the audio tapes, so these games here, you had like Fireball, Suicide Mission, Escape from the Mine Master, you know, even Frogger. There was a Frogger game. They all came in a tape, like an audio tape, normally used for music. They would put in an audio tape player, and it would give you this better quality game out of your Atari 2600. The ones I wanted to look at though over here were the 20th Century Fox games, because these are the ones that kind of took like the old movies and TV shows and stuff like that, like Alien. Well, I mean, they kind of took the concept of Alien, not too much, but you know, it is Alien. They kind of branded it that way. And they got MASH over here. Again, I think it was more like the movie, not really the TV show. And they had Porky's, what was it, the beefsteak, Revenge of the Beefsteak Tomatoes. I always thought that was kind of an interesting name here. It's right there. And Turmoil, which is actually a pretty cool game on the Atari 2600. This is an interesting selection here. These are the expensive games that were made by Mystique. So they're adult content games. So they would have like nudity, sexual content. I mean, but it's Atari. I mean, we're talking about pixelated graphics here. You had to really know what was going on. But, I mean, the ones that I'm more familiar with is like the Custer's Revenge, the Beat 'em and Eat 'em, and the Bachelor Party. I'm not sure. I guess these are like the ones that were like both games involved. I've never seen these before, so I have no idea what they are. But it looks like they have the same titles, but there's multiples. Kind of interesting, and that themselves, like these, the Custer's Revenge, Beat 'em and Eat 'em, and all that, these are rare on their own. These games, you couldn't just go into like your Kmart or wherever and buy them off the shelf. You had to actually go into the right store. You had to know they existed. You had to ask them. They'd be behind the counter. Kind of like, you know, a kid trying to buy a porno mag at that point. And you had to know they existed. So we're going to look at some boxed stuff here. He's got a shelf here. So like I mentioned, he likes to collect a lot of the kind of the offshore, the clone products and stuff. And so some of these I've never actually heard of, but there's tons of them. So obviously I'm not going to hear of every one of them. Like the Matra 3600. You can tell that's an Atari. You can basically see the outline of an Atari Junior there. You can tell. Unfortunately, well, the controller itself it kind of looks like the 7800, but it looks a little bit more awkward. I don't know how that would work, but you know, it's very thin here. And you know, it's got the stick in the middle and then 2 buttons on the top. So it's be kind of interesting to see how that would play. This one kind of has that Coleco Gemini look to it. At least the controllers do. The 2600, I remember seeing something like this. Now that's interesting. It's got the 7800 style controller with a 2600 Junior body. I've never seen that one. I don't even know if that ever was in the stores when I was shopping. I remember seeing Well, this one for sure, because this is the one I have, the Atari 2600 Junior that came in the burgundy box. But I also remember seeing one just like it in this silver box. So I don't know if any of these would be the same ones. This one's what, Funivision? All these interesting names. This one was obviously in a different language. But what strikes me odd is it's got that controller there, which I'm used to seeing with the 7800 in Europe. So I don't know how a 2600 ended up with a controller like that. Okay, so moving on to here. Now, when I saw this picture, okay, there was three things going on here, and I had no idea about any of it. I'm still kind of unclear about this. I was asking him about this. I'm still waiting on an answer, but I'm assuming this must have been some kind of like Asian clone of the Atari, because the cart slot looks like it fits an Atari. These type of joysticks remind me of something I would have used on like the Commodore 64 or any of the other computer or compatible 9-pin controllers. And this is what struck me as interesting, and so did this, because I saw an Activision looking component, and so I asked him about it, and he basically told me that this was like a Brazil clone of an Atari, and that it didn't last very long. Like it was kind of released and just kind of faded. My guess is Activision probably got wind of it or something like that and was, why are you putting our label on there? I'm sure there was a lot of issues with copyright claims, but interesting nonetheless. I mean, it looks pretty cool. It looks legit. It looks like something Activision actually put out. I don't know what this VJ89000 would be. I have no idea. And it's sitting on top of a video game organizer, which is cool because it fits the system and it has all the cart slots there to put all your cartridges in. So then when you're playing, you can actually just swap the card out rather than going up to your shelf and grabbing new games. But I just wanted to focus a little bit more on these things here. So this was one of his framed games that he gave me a picture of. One of his more expensive games as well. It's called Cubicolor, and it's made by it's made by the programmer Rob Fulop, who worked with the company of Magic, and they made a ton of great games for the Atari. They made great games for the Intellivision. Typically, they were in a very silvery box. They had nice silvery labels. Even I can tell by the look of the actual cartridge having that design. That was your typical Magic design. This obviously had a label across. So the story behind this was it was made in the 80s, but Magic didn't want to buy it, I guess, or didn't want to release it, I should say, for whatever reasons. Maybe they just felt it was too difficult. I don't know. It's like a Rubik's Cube style game that's also a puzzle. And so what Rob Fulop did was he, in the 90s, decided to actually press the game onto the cart and sell it to dedicated fans. And he sold it in this fashion where he gave them an actual letter, he gave them a sign, like a signature, just authenticity, I guess, to say that this is a real thing. This was actually created. And it looks like the label he did himself. This looks like it was probably done on a very basic label printer. And he just slapped it on there and was like, there you go. He wasn't going to go through the trouble of actually creating proper printed labels. You have to remember, in the 80s and 90s, stuff like that was very difficult. It's not like today where we have printers that can print off these vibrant, full color graphical things. It's just, you have to look at the time period. This one too, I was kind of curious about this because I didn't know what it was. It says Coke Wins, if you look at it, and it says original, and I'm like, what is Coke Wins? But it turns out this is the Pepsi Invaders, and I've heard of this. I've heard of the Pepsi Invaders. It was a limited run. It was something that was made. There was about 125 of these actually developed. They were actually meant for the Atlanta employees, from what I've read online. So I could be wrong. I'm just reading what I saw. And, the white label was like a homemade label. I guess Coke Wins. The idea is that they took Space Invaders And instead of blowing up aliens, you're blowing up the Pepsi letters. So obviously it's a Coke product to say, you know, Coke is battling Pepsi. Now these things I was really unclear about, so I kind of asked him to kind of give me a little bit of a background on it. Um, like they're called they're made by a company called Dactar. I think I'm saying it right. These are made in Brazil, from what he told me, and it's the 007 Dactar video game system. Now, they're built into a briefcase, so I'm not sure what the briefcase issue was. I know things like these might have been made to try and sell a system. Perhaps the salesperson had it in a briefcase, they could take it around, or perhaps this was sold as a means of portability. But it's kind of weird to see something like this being a portable system, because it's not really portable when you need to have like a ton of games just to make anything. But perhaps that's what those slots on the side are for. I don't know. But interesting nonetheless. I mean, the 007 even adds more to the mystique to it, being that it's, you know, kind of looks like a spy briefcase. I guess that's another one there. That's the kind of like what I was saying earlier. You know, they made their own little versions. These are all literally not prototypes, but offshore products of, you know, essentially rip-offs of the original Atari. Because Atari, when they created their system, essentially, they used off-the-shelf parts. So it was all, there was nothing proprietary about it. So anybody could have made their own Atari. There was even a lawsuit that went out. So they tried to sue people. It didn't work because nothing was proprietary. Probably what led to the video game crash of North America was that these offshore products were just like overwhelming. And here's some of them in their box. I mean, the boxes even look cool. I mean, like the outer space look. There it is there, the Dactar TV computer system. Obviously all not in English. But I mean, the artwork looks cool. You go up here, you got the TV game 2600. They used the 2600 name, but they probably left out anywhere to do with Atari. Now those joysticks look kind of funky. This looks like an Atari regular joystick, but it's got this like ribbed thing going on here. I guess they figured, you know, the grip would be better. I don't know. It looks like a Sears Telegames to me, which is, you know, the Sears version of the Atari. And over here we got the Game Over 2600 TV game console per Television Con 128 Ganoki, whatever that means. Here we're going to look at it again on one of his walls of accomplishments. I think these are Dactar, the games. So a lot of these, I tried to look into these, and there wasn't a whole lot of information on it. I mean, these things are so kind of sparsed out, and there isn't a whole lot of information to really look into this stuff. But I do recognize a lot of titles like Enduro, Saxon, Turmoil. So these are probably all of the South American, you know, the knockoff essentially versions. River Raid sold all over the world. And here's kind of a zoom in on some of the more you know, rare titles that he's got. Now these ones here, I mean, some of the ones I noticed right away. I mean, Hero's a great game. I think anybody who has an Atari 2600 should try and get their hands on that game. It's expensive though. It's expensive as a single cartridge, let alone a boxed cartridge like this, like a complete in box. I've even heard Basic Math, and I'm not sure why, but Basic Math is expensive. To have a complete in box copy of Basic Math, for whatever reason, it's really expensive. Crazy Climber, Video Cube, all of these ones are all kind of rare games. Gravatar, they're all in the $100 range, and that's just for the cartridge. So getting these in box format is pretty crazy. X-Men, I remember hearing about this. This is not anything to do with X-Men. This is more of like a pornograph type of game. But again, very rare title. Very hard to get your hands on it. And I can't believe he has it in a complete box. Over here, though, We have Frogger 2, which is a little bit more of a rare title. I don't know if anybody really knows that there's a Frogger 2, but there is. Sword Quest Waterworld. This one was a little bit more of the, well, it's the rarer title of all the Sword Quests. Mr. Deuce Castle, expensive Parker Brothers game. Cubert's Cubes, one of those ones that's also like usually around $100 if you ever find one. Pengu is pretty expensive. Obelix, which is, as far as I know, only in Europe, but it's pretty much a game that's, well, if you've ever played Taz, it's similar. This one here, Chuck the Chase the Chuck Ray. I don't know why I screw that one up. Chase the Chuck Wagon. I actually have the cartridge in the manual, which I bought off somebody from the Atari Age sales group. It's kind of an interesting game because it was only sold as a promotion, much like the game I talked about earlier, which was Tooth Protector, sold by Johnson & Johnson. And I thought Chuck the Chase Wagon was really rare, but it turns out that the other one, the Tooth Protectors one, is even more rare. But in a, either way, they're both really rare games. They're both hard to get your hands on. And this is the actual box, which I don't have. I only have the manual and the cartridge. Most people, I think, probably threw the box away. And I think that's probably what happened to a lot of the older games, is that people just got the game and they threw the box away. I'm going to move on to Up and Down, another really good but hard to get your hands on game for the Atari, let alone get your hands on the box. Same with Spy Hunter, which I just did a video on recently. And this is an interesting title because it requires that little piece where you can connect two controllers together. I'm not sure if Matt actually has that. That would be an interesting question if he does have that. I'd like to see it. We got some of these ones here, which you kind of have to go by the picture. Like that's obviously Missile Command. That looks like tennis. That's golf, I guess. Got some Supervision titles here. Really great game right there by Sega. Zaxxon, always a classic. Mr. Do. These ones here, I remember somebody on the Atari Age forum, or somebody actually contacted me and asked me about these ones here, made by Baum, and I really didn't know what they were. And he showed me a picture of it, and I was like, I've never seen that before. And he was asking me if I knew what the value was, and I had to look it up, and I couldn't find it. I mean, I think I saw somebody on eBay trying to sell them for like $600 or some weird thing. Like, I don't know. It's always weird when you find these oddball titles and then somebody wants a ton of money. You don't know if it's just somebody being greedy or if they're actually worth that kind of money. You know, if they see something they think, hey, it's rare, it's worth money. I don't know. These ones I'm not familiar with, but it looks kind of cool. I mean, the artwork that they put on these games were always astounding. And then, of course, they had these 31 in one kind of cartridges. I think there's a bunch of them. This one obviously has Mario Brothers, but it looks like it has a ton of other games. So, quite interesting to look into. I know there's a bunch of them. There's like Activision ones. This looks like German. A lot of German games. These are all like, European. Aliens Return. Never seen that before. In fact, I don't even know what this is. For the Atari VCS 2600. It's always cool when you see these games. You just never heard of them. Of course, some of these can just be repackaged, games, just new names. Got these 16-in-1s. That looks like, it's got the Real Sports Boxing. I guess that would be Frogger. What would that be? These ones kind of struck me as odd too. I mean, they use the same graphic on the box, but then the different names there. So basketball. Bobby is Going Home. That's an interesting title. Buck Rogers. Chopper Commander. Enduro. We got these Super Game, Commando Raids, Boom Bang, Bank Heist. Some of these are familiar, but a lot of them I've never heard of. Pole Position, Zaxxon. It's just interesting that they use the same artwork and they just kind of change the name at the top. This one I'm not familiar with at all. It's got the Intellivision name on there. It's Enduro, which I know that game, but I've never seen a box that looks like this, especially with the Intellivision name on it. I have no idea what that's about, because Intellivision, you know, they made they had the M network, which made games for the Atari 2600, but I've never seen one that actually had the full name Intellivision on there. Like, how would you not confuse this for an Intellivision game? Here's just some more complete boxed games. This is the Atari 2800, which essentially is the, they call it the Video Arcade 2. It's got the 7800 body, but it's a 2600 system and different kind of controllers. They almost look like the Gemini controllers, which is right here. This is the Coleco Gemini. This was made by Coleco. It was their version of the Atari 2600. Again, the parts to make a 2600 were not proprietary, so any company can make it. And at the time, the Coleco had their adapter, which I can't remember, they called it like something one or something. You can plug it into your ColecoVision, and then you can play Atari games off of it. So essentially, they just took that kind of concept and just made their own system, a standalone system. Now, the cool thing about that was their controllers had a paddle built in and the joystick. And I actually have two of these because my friend gave me a Gemini a long time ago. And foolish me plugged it in, it didn't work, so I thought it was broken and I threw it away. Probably only needed cleaning, now that I think about it. But foolish me threw it away. But I do have the controllers, so that's pretty good. This one kind of struck me as funny. Apple Vision. Because when you see that, you would think it's had something to do with Apple, but obviously it doesn't. There's a better look of the Atari 2800. And I know a lot of people throw this question out there on the Atari Age forums and stuff like that in the Facebook group because they see this thing and they have no idea what it is. And that's pretty much what it is. It's an Atari 2600 in a shell that looks like a 7800. I remember seeing this one here, the factory reconditioned. These pop up on eBay every once in a while. Some people think they're worth a fortune too. There's the kids controller, which works with the those Sesame Street games, the kids games. As you can see, it's kind of a blue controller with big buttons. There's no joystick or anything, and it's got overlays that fit over that based on the game that you're playing with. These are kind of interesting. These video libraries, cartridge libraries, videoplexers. I guess they're all just ways of storing your games. I believe I have this one actually in my man cave. You can probably see it on some of my photos, and it's just you know, it just holds cartridges. The Compumate. Now this one I had to read about it because I was actually, you know, interested in this because I never seen it before, and apparently it's a basic keyboard enhancer. So you plug this thing in, you get the full expansive power of having a keyboard on your Atari. You're essentially turning your Atari into a computer, and has a 16K built-in ROM, 2K RAM, I believe I read, and it has BASIC. So you can write your own programs, essentially what you would do on like a Commodore 64 or some of the other computers that allow you to program. That's pretty interesting. I mean, I didn't know that existed. There's the... I'm not sure what that is there. Of course, we have these like oddball controller systems here. Turn your Atari 2600 into a power arcade. And KidVid. And this is a mash. Again, I'm not familiar with how this worked or why this is in such a strange packaging. Be interesting to know. And so that's it. I mean, there's just so much here. I mean, I could probably spend a couple of hours just going through this and researching all of these. This is a massive, dedicated Atari 2600 collection. So it's pretty cool that he's, you know, he's spent this time and this money and this energy to collect this amount of stuff. I'm very impressed by it. I'm glad I was able to do a full-on video of it. And I hope if he watches this video that he actually can leave some comments below and kind of fill in the gaps where I missed. Because, you know, I had to do a lot of research just to do this one video, and it kind of made me realize how, you know, my Atari knowledge is not as much as I thought it was. So many hidden gems, so many offshore products, so many things. Anyways, hope you liked the video. I hope Matt enjoys the video. I tried to do him some justice. He's a real cool guy. I've been talking with him on Atari Age forum, on the Facebook group, I should say, and he's been really helpful, and he's really proud of his collection, and it just shows. Anyways, hope you liked the video. Hope you subscribe to my channel. Talk to you later.